So we are here today to talk about the formerly known Cecil Hotel and the case of the disappearance of Elisa Lam. Two very ominous topics, both shrouded in their own sense of overlapping mystery. I do want to let you know that this is an incredibly heavy topic, and during the video I will be discussing some pretty upsetting subject matter while taking you through the history of the hotel, so I do urge you to consider this before continuing on with the video. I would also like to mention that due to platform restrictions, I am unable to use certain words or phrases, so I do apologize in advance for the points in which I have to use replacement solutions. For those of you who aren't familiar with either the Cecil Hotel or Elisa Lam, or perhaps those of you who might need a bit of refreshing on the topic, I'm gonna start us off with some background information. The Cecil Hotel originally opened its doors on December 20th of 1924, advertised as a budget hotel located in the city of Los Angeles. The first death ever recorded inside the hotel, which stood 15 stories high with 700 guest rooms, was 52-year-old Percy Ormond Cook, who took his own life inside of his hotel room on January 22nd of 1926 after he was unable to reconcile a dispute involving his wife and child. After the incidents, the floodgates opened, leading to the occurrence of at least 17 deaths, including Elisa, on the property, which cost just $1.5 million to build between the years of 1926 to 2017, when the building was eventually closed for renovation after coming under new management. The second series of deaths occurred in the 1930s at the beginning of the Great Depression, when the hotel saw 4 more of its patrons lose their lives due to self-inflicted actions. Another 3 deaths occurred during the decade: Irwin C. Nelbit and W.K. Norton, who died of unknown causes in their separate rooms, and Grace E. Margot, who fell from the 9th floor window. It was never determined if her demise was intentional, accidental, or due to foul play. As the 1940s rolled in, the Cecil hit its peak, becoming the place to be on the Main Street Strip. That was until the city of Los Angeles began pushing more and more of its homeless population into the area. The hotel, originally created as an affordable safe haven for middle-class world travelers, quickly became home base for many of the area's mentally ill, homeless, and substance-addicted members. In 1940, another death was recorded after teacher Dorothy Sager was found deceased in her hotel room. 4 years later, the first confirmed act of lethal violence followed after a woman gave birth and then did something I really can't talk about on this platform, but I will say that she did leave the hotel alone. In 1947, Robert Smith perished after leaping from a 7th floor window. The same fate met Helen Gurney in 1954 and Julia Frances Moore in 1962. However, Julia had leaped from the 8th floor. In 1962, Pauline Otten leaped from the 9th floor and landed on a pedestrian, neither of which walked away from the incident. In 1964, a member of staff, Goldie Osgood, also known as Pigeon Goldie based off of her love for feeding local pigeons in the area, was found lifeless inside her hotel room after she had been attacked, violated, and pierced by a sharp blade. In 1975, there was one more confirmed passing after a woman using pseudonym Alice Lowell leapt from the 12th floor, and her true identity was never revealed. As we move into the 1980s and 90s, two pretty disturbing names stand out on the hotel's guest list: Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker, and Jack Unterweger, an Australian serial killer. The first to visit was Richard Ramirez, who stayed at the hotel in 1985 during his home invasion and spree, which started in 1984 and continued up until his arrest in 1985 at the age of 25 years old, after his image had been released to the public and he was caught trying to pull a woman out of her car in an attempt to steal her vehicle. Richards was later charged with causing 13 deaths, 5 attempted 11 violation charges, and 14 charges of burglary. He was sentenced to death by gas chamber but died while in prison due to health complications. During his stay at the Cecil, it was often reported that Ramirez would emerge from the hotel's back alley, his clothes stained red. He would strip down to his underwear, also stained red, and then make his way back to his hotel room while muttering the words, "No one's got a problem with this." Jack Unterweger, the second serial killer to stay in the hotel, did so in 1991, acting as a journalist working on a story about the red light district of Los Angeles. During his stay at the hotel, Jack would regularly engage with law enforcement, chatting with police officers, and attending ride-alongs. He was also seen many times conversing with the woman working in the red light district, who he often invited to come back to his hotel room at the Cecil. During this time, Jack was gaining more and more traction within the city of Los Angeles. People saw him as a legitimate journalist, and some even admired his work. What the public didn't know was that prior to moving to America, Unterweger was convicted of as well as indecent in Austria and was convicted in 1974. After his release in 1990, almost immediately women began showing up deceased in his area. During his stay at the Cecil, at least 3 women had turned up dead in the area, their undergarments tied around their necks using Jack Unterweger's signature knot. In 1992, federal agents arrested Jack in Miami after authorities who had tracked the man across Europe notified the agency of his crimes. Jack was extradited to Austria, where he maintained his innocence but was ultimately found guilty and sentenced to death. However, just hours after his sentencing, Unterweger took his own life in his jail cell at the age of 43. Moving on from Ramirez and Unterweger, in 1992, a body was once again found on the hotel's premises, this time in the alley behind the hotel. While police were unable to identify the man, they were able to determine that he had either fallen, jumped, or been pushed from the 15th floor of the Cecil. Fast forward to 2007 and the hotel comes under new management. Amy Price, who had been hired to fix up the place and help revamp the Cecil's reputation. During Amy's time at the hotel, the owners thought it best to change part of the hotel's name from Cecil to Stay on Main in order to distance themselves from the building's sordid past. Half of the rooms, reserved for long-term residents, remained under the name Cecil, and the other half, for travelers, Stay on Main. While there were separate entrances, both sections of the hotel did share the same elevator, which is important to note. The change of the names didn't really seem to have any effect on the ways in which the public of Los Angeles viewed the establishment, and with room rates being as low as $10 a night, the main clients of the Stay on Main portion of the hotel were often addicts, nomads, and the less fortunate elderly. In an interview, Amy claims that during her time at the Cecil, at least 80 deaths occurred, the causes of which range from old age and accidental overdoses to self-inflicted harm, disappearances, and perhaps the most well-documented case of disappearance that took place at the Cecil Hotel would be the disappearance and reappearance of Elisa Lam, an incident that took place between January 29th and February 19th in 2013. At the time of her disappearance, Elisa, the 21-year-old Canadian-born student, had been staying at the Cecil. She had booked a room for 3 nights at the establishment, originally staying in a shared suite offered by the hotel, but later moved into her own room after several complaints had been made about her behavior to the front desk. On February 29th, the day Elisa was supposed to check out of the Cecil, at the time Stay on Main, she disappeared, after being captured acting strangely on CCTV in the hotel's elevator. This was the same day her parents reported her missing after she had failed to check in with them and provide an update on her plans after leaving the hotel. Over 2 weeks later, Elisa's body was discovered floating in a water tank located on the roof of the building. There is not a lot about Elisa's disappearance or the discovery of her body that adds up, but there are some things that should be taken into consideration when looking at the case. At the time Elisa left Canada, she was looking to branch out in life, take risks, and try new things. And she had also been suffering from severe mental health struggles and had previously been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. Elisa was also a blogger, and in one of her last blog posts on January 29th of 2013, she wrote, "My laptop screen is brighter than my future." It was also reported by a member of staff that 2 men had been seen with Elisa at the hotel, during which time one handed her a box, contents unknown. On the day of Elisa's disappearance, she can be seen acting strangely in the hotel's elevator. When the doors of the elevator opened, Elisa stepped in and immediately began pressing buttons. She then waits in the corner of the elevator before peering out and looking back and forth through the doors. She steps back in again and hides in the corner before repeating the same behavior, this time stepping right out of the elevator, looking around, and then retreating back inside, where she starts waving her hands around and pressing even more buttons. Eventually, Elisa leaves the elevator and she is never seen again. While some people believe Elisa's behavior was an erratic attempt at escaping some kind of stalker, with some even claiming to have seen the corner of a shoe in the bottom left-hand side of the video, others believe that Elisa had been playing the Korean elevator game used to summon ghosts. What is most strange perhaps is that the footage was taken on the 14th floor, in the long-term resident section of the hotel, while Elisa had been staying on the 5th floor, in the area designated for short-term stays. Whatever the reason for Elisa's behavior or her presence on the 14th floor, this footage would be the last anyone saw of her until 21 days later, when maintenance workers at the hotel discovered her body. They were sent to the roof after residents of both the Cecil and Stay on Main had begun complaining about the quality of the water coming out of the sinks and showers in the rooms, claiming that it tasted funny, smelt weird, and that the color was off. When the staff made their way up to the water tanks in an attempt to assess the situation and rectify the issue, they saw no signs of forced entry onto the roof. Maintenance began to examine the water tanks, opening them up one by one until they discovered Elisa. Police were called to the scene, and what started as a missing persons case quickly turned into a murder investigation. However, with no evidence of foul play, Elisa's death was was ultimately ruled an accident, and it was reported that she was possibly under the influence at the time of her death. Again, it is important to note that leading up to the incident, Elisa had revealed to the followers of her blog that she was feeling extremely depressed, and at this time she had also stopped taking her bipolar medication and was exhibiting some extremely erratic behavior, noticed by her former roommate at the hotel, as well as many members of the staff. As for how she got onto the roof, according to police who had used dogs to track her scent, her trail ended at a window which led to a fire escape that had access to the roof of the building. They believe Elisa to have taken the outside ladder to the roof during a manic episode in which she might have been experiencing auditory hallucinations and paranoia. What is strange, however, is how Elisa, a petite young woman, would have been able to move the 20-pound lid off of the water tank, jump in, and then perfectly replace the lid back on top from the inside, where she was later found floating face up with no clothes. As I said, a lot of the details of this case just really don't add up. Some people have speculated that she was not alone on the roof that night, and furthermore, some believe that she had not been alone in the elevator either, with some going so far as to say that the hotel had doctored the footage in order to protect either the assailant or perhaps their reputation. As always, if you do have any theories about this tragic incident, please feel free to share them in the comments, and I'll make sure to check them out when you do. Okay, you guys, I hope you're feeling good today and that you drink some water, eat some food, and get some fresh air. I've been your host, Hannah Thompson, and I do look forward to seeing you in our next video.